welcome everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. I recently heard a talk by Dharma Swami, who's a big guru and Swami in our movement. And he was talking at a TED conference in London, to a business conference. And he said something that really stuck out to me. He said, we're supposed to use things to serve and to help and to love people. But instead, in this society, we use and exploit people, and we love things. So, Dharma is actually the very opposite of this. Acting in a way where we use people and we love things is a way where our consciousness can become degraded and lowered. Dharma means that we're acting in a way where our consciousness is elevated. It means acting in a way where we attain spiritual benefit and make spiritual advancement. So, the Bhagavad Gita is actually a scripture, and it's a conversation between Krishna and his friend and devotee Arjuna. And it's actually a book on Dharma. It's a book that tells us how to live and how to achieve success in spiritual life. So there's so many books of knowledge. There's so many books. Vedas that means knowledge. There's so much knowledge. And Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all this knowledge. Bhagavad Gita is 700 verses spoken by Lord Krishna, sung by Lord Krishna. Bhagavad Gita means the song of God. So 700 verses written in Sanskrit, written down by Sri Vyasadeva. And every verse is enunciating how to live according to Dharma, how to fulfill our Dharma. We each have a unique occupation, we have a unique mission, we have a unique duty we have to fulfill in order to elevate ourselves and elevate society, collective consciousness, and elevate. So the very first verse of Bhagavad Gita mentions Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra is the battlefield where the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna takes place. And it mentions that it's also called Dharma Setra. So this is the field of Dharma. This is the environment where Dhritarashtra asked Sanjaya's secretary, who is enunciating the Bhagavad Gita to him, he said, so what did they do? What did they do? And that's the question, is that we're in this world and we have so many choices. So what are we going to do? So this field. So the Bhagavad Gita is comprised of 5 main subjects. The first subject is the Supreme Controller, the Supreme Ishvara, and that's Krishna. And there's so many other controllers, but the Supreme Controller is Krishna, and all other controllers get their power from Krishna. And Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. And a lot of people, religious people, will say that God is not a person. But according to our teachers, our line of disciplic succession, and just understanding that God is the source of everything. So how can the created, us, have less than the Creator? Life comes from life. We see that. And consciousness comes from consciousness. And persons come from a person. So God would not be complete if he wasn't a person. So God is a person. And connecting with God is a personal connection. That's another way of understanding that when we connect with persons, that's when we become satisfied. Connecting with things does not satisfy us at our core. So the second subject of Bhagavad Gita is the Jivatmas, and that's us. And we're the part and parcels of God. We're the minute part and parcels. And we're qualitatively the same, but we have a different role, and we're small and God's very big. And then the third subject that comprises this field is the prakriti, or the material nature, the material, the cosmic manifestation. And this is controlled, or has a beginning and an end. And the fourth subject is time. And time acts in the material and cosmic manifestation. And things in the material world have a beginning and an end. There's birth and there's death. And then the fifth subject is karma, or activity. So this question in the beginning, what did they do? And this is what we have control over. We have minute independence to act. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So there's a pivotal point in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna is very confused. He's very bewildered. And we are also, if we're not confused and bewildered, then either we have spiritual understanding, or it's hard to not be, because our nature is one of eternality, full of knowledge and full of bliss. And this material world is the exact opposite. It's temporary. It's filled with ignorance and suffering. So Arjuna is bewildered in this state. And Arjuna makes a pivotal point, is that he has faith in his friend Krishna. And Krishna is the original spiritual master. He is God himself. These scriptures are spoken by God himself. And so Arjuna is confused, he's bewildered. And he is in anxiety. And then there's a key point, a key verse, the second chapter, where he says, "Now I am confused about my duty, and have lost all composure due to miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple, and the soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me." This is key. Arjuna takes the mood of, I am confused. It's miserly weakness. I know in my heart what I have to do. I have to do my duty. I have to act according to my Dharma. But I don't have the strength to do it. I don't have the proper understanding to do it. So this mood of, maybe we hear spiritual knowledge, but are we really hearing? Are we really taking it into our heart? Are we really trying to act and trying to elevate ourselves? So taking this mood of humility that Arjuna takes, I'm confused about my duty, and lost all composure due to miserly weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best to me. Now I am your disciple, the soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So he accepts Krishna as his spiritual master, and he takes the role of disciple. And so now Arjuna is ready to hear. He's ready to hear from Krishna. He wants to be enlightened. And he's ready, he has full faith in his spiritual master, Krishna. So he is ready to act according to Krishna's instructions. So Arjuna is this bewildering state we're in. We're in a very precarious situation. And I've told this analogy before, but it gives a good idea about our situation in this material world. Is that coming to this material world, away from our true nature of eternality, knowledge, and bliss, is like we have fallen into a well. And on the way down, the fall down, we grabbed onto two roots, and we're hanging on. And as the light adjusts and our eyes begin to see, we look to the bottom of the well, and there's a cobra. And then we look up as we hang there, and there's a tiger looking over the edge of the well. And then we see on the roots that we're holding on to that there's a white mouse on one root and a black mouse on the other root. And the mice are chewing through the roots. So we are very bewildered in this thing. We're very in anxiety. But then we look up and see a tree above, and we see honey. There's a beehive, and there's honey dripping down from the beehive. And it's dripping in front of us. So we stick our tongue out, and we enjoy the honey. So this example is like us trying to enjoy temporary pleasures in this material world. From the moment we are born, we begin the dying process. And that's not our nature. So the honey may be good to some extent, but it's not the true fulfillment that we're looking for. So, Guru, approaching a Guru, this is a key factor in our life. And we actually, when we take the spiritual life, we have so many Gurus, and we are trying to receive instruction, but we need a proper Guru. We need them to be speaking the essence of spiritual knowledge according to Krishna, what Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita. That matches perfectly. So we have a disciplic succession. And Srila Prabhupada has brought this message to us based on time, place, and circumstance in our situation. And he's been able to, through this Bhagavad Gita as it is, he's been able to help us to understand what the goal of life is, what the highest Dharma is. And so, although we have many different gurus, and gurus have different roles, I have many gurus. Before I came to Krishna consciousness, I was simply lost. I didn't have any direction. But now that I've taken shelter of Srila Prabhupada and great devotees who are also following Srila Prabhupada, and Bhakta and Navadvip Prabhu, and Mother Sadami, that their instruction is matching what Krishna is saying. Their instruction is to help us personally make spiritual advancement. When you're ready to you take a guru, you have faith in a guru, and then you start to hear. And this is the process, is hearing. We hear with reception, with humility, in a mood of surrender. Please instruct me. I'm ready to act according to your instructions. So Krishna is not ready to instruct Arjuna. And I can't describe the whole Bhagavad Gita because every verse is beautiful and every verse is wonderful, and I can only give it a few points from the Bhagavad Gita. But first, in order for us to do our Dharma, in order for us to fulfill our mission, to know how to act, we have to know who we are. Many people think that they're a human being. Many people think that they're a man or a woman, or an American, or a Christian, or a Hindu, or a Muslim. But actually, Krishna says, you are not this body. You are spirit soul. He says, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor in the future shall anyone cease to be. So, understanding that the soul cannot be destroyed, that we are eternal, that when we embrace spiritual life, we are trying to elevate and give nourishment to our soul, so we can progress in that way. So then Krishna says, he says, act free from attachment to the results. That actually the results are not up to us. The results are up to Krishna. We actually can't control the results. So he says, do your duty. Do what you need to do. Act according to your propensities. We all have certain abilities, talents, and we all have propensities to act in a certain way. So he says, do your duty according to what you've been given. What do you enjoy doing? What makes you happy? What do other people enjoy and you do? What are you good at? And so this is the system. This is called Varnashram Dharma. And this is half of Srila Prabhupada's mission. So that we act according to our spiritual and our social statuses in life. So there's 4 main classes. There's a Brahmana class who's the head of society. And they are there to enlighten and to guide the society. And they give instruction to the Kshatriya class, who is the administrative class. They would be like the president or the governor. And so they are well versed in Dharma and principles of Dharma, and how to act according to religious principles for the society and everybody in the society to be peaceful and happy. So they give instruction to the Kshatriya class, the administrative class. And then the Vaishyas are those who produce. They grow food, they have animals, they produce vegetables and milk, and they're the business class. And then the Sudra class is the working class, and they are expert at helping the other 3 classes, supporting the other 3 classes. And then there's also spiritual orders. There's the beginning of life, brahmacharya life, means celibate student life. Where up to the age of 25, we simply focus on our spiritual life. We don't think about getting married. We don't think about girlfriends or boyfriends. We're with the spiritual master from a young age. And we're able to be absorbed in spiritual life. We have a strong foundation. And then usually around the age of 25 is when most people will get married. This is grihastha life, grihastha ashram. And then there's knowledge of how to have a happy, healthy household where you can raise children in spiritual life. And then the third stage of life is when you retire from family life, the kids are grown, and you and your wife or husband focus on spiritual life again. And then the final stage is the renounced order, is as you get closer to leaving your body, leaving this world, onto your next journey, then you renounce. Then you renounce completely all your bodily attachments. And so you prepare yourself, absorbing in God consciousness, Krishna consciousness, in order to prepare yourself for the final stage of life. So it's a very practical system, and these orders are there to help us make advancement. Srila Prabhupada said these are stepping stones in spiritual life. So as we work, according to our propensities, according to our natures, we aren't attached to the results. We know that the results are up to Krishna. We're simply satisfied with doing our duty. And we are content and happy when success comes of its own accord. We're not attached to the success or failure, the happiness or distress. But when success comes, we're satisfied. When it doesn't come, we're also okay. We're satisfied. So we're doing our duty. We're doing the best we can. And we're not attached to the results. This is called the mode of goodness. And the platform to engage in spiritual life is the mode of goodness. Mode of goodness is, the qualities of the mode of goodness are peacefulness, kindness, cleanliness, happiness. These exemplify the mode of goodness. Because it's very difficult. It's very difficult to engage in spiritual life when we're attached to gratifying our mind and senses, when we are working so hard just for a little bit of sense gratification, when we're intoxicated, or when we're so attached to the fruits of our work, when we are, most people in this society are in the mode of passion, when they work so hard just to get some money to satisfy their bodily demands. And it's very difficult in this state of extreme anxiety, because everybody's competing, everybody's trying to get more for themselves. And this is the material consciousness. We want to rise above that. So then, an interesting verse, a wonderful verse towards the end of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Sarva dharman prityaja, mam ekam saranam vraja, aham tvam sarva bhavebhyo mokshaye shamimasucha. He says, abandon all varieties of dharma and surrender unto me. I will deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. So, Krishna here is enunciating the highest dharma. He's saying, really, your true eternal nature, your eternal occupation is to surrender and love to me. All these other dharmas, all these other religious principles are to get us to the point of surrendering and love to Krishna. This is our true nature. Our true nature is to serve. Just like we can see that the essential nature of a fire is to be hot, to give off light and heat. Our essential nature is to serve. We can understand practically from our experience that we get more joy and more pleasure from giving than from getting. So when we realize that serving and pleasing Krishna brings us the highest pleasure, the highest joy, and that by our nature we are pleasure seeking. We're all seeking after pleasure. But we don't know where pleasure comes from. And Krishna is known as the reservoir of all pleasure. Krishna is the all-attractive. Krishna can attract all the living entities, and he does attract all the living entities in the universe. So So when Krishna says, if you take full shelter of me, he says, engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me, worship, being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come. When we love somebody, we think about them. We want to be absorbed in them. We want to be thinking how we can please them every moment. And we want to use what we've been given to serve our beloved. And at the same time, Krishna is the greatest lover. He's always thinking about us. He's always with us. Eternally, he's with us. He's in our hearts. Constantly, he's never left us. So when we begin to turn to Krishna, he begins to reciprocate with us. He begins to respond. He begins to give the love back. And then the love grows deeper. And in the spiritual world, the bliss, the love is always increasing. But we can't see because we're covered over by activities that take us away from Krishna. So another nature of the soul is to be always active. You always want to do something. So when the modern music, there's a science to the music they put on the radio. There's something called a hook that hooks the mind. And when you hear a song, that song may be in your mind all day long. And there's other things that absorb our consciousness. If you've ever been in a room where everybody is very hungry and they start to eat, everybody becomes quiet. Because this is another activity that absorbs our consciousness. So Krishna consciousness is a vehicle in order to achieve our highest Dharma. Krishna consciousness, religion is not the goal. Religion is a process to attain love of God. So we can absorb our consciousness by doing the things that we already do. When we grow food, when we sell food, when we cook food, when we eat food, we do it all for Krishna. We do it all for the satisfaction of the Lord, the consciousness of Him. And as we cook, we're thinking about the pleasure of the Lord. And we can also be absorbed in the chanting of Hare Krishna. I came to the realization tonight that I always want to be in the association of Bhakta life. Because I become absorbed in the names of Krishna. When we chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we are directly able to associate with Krishna through his names. And that's his blessing to us. He allows us to absorb in him through his names. And we dance for Krishna. We sing, we dance, and we feast for Krishna. So we can do what we're doing. You don't have to give up your job. You don't have to give up your occupation. But the key is, what is the purpose you are doing it for? What is the consciousness in what you are doing? That is the key. The key is not what you are doing, but what are you doing it for? Who are you doing it for? So Krishna consciousness is changing our activities to do for Krishna. And when we start to get a taste of spiritual life, then it's easy to give up some of the things that actually take us farther away from Krishna. And as we show it with sincerity, with determination, we engage in spiritual practice, Krishna helps us. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you. So it was a really, really nice class. Thank you. You were speaking about that whether success comes or not, that we're satisfied. Right? I know that there's a couple of verses in Bhagavad Gita that talk about tolerating distress and happiness. And this concept of, I think we can understand tolerating distress, finding a silver lining, or finding God's plan, or just having faith that it's God's plan, even though we might not understand why the things are happening. But I don't know, can you speak a little bit about tolerating happiness, what that means, or how to accomplish that?
Well, yeah. According to our actions, there's reactions. This is karma. And so, what is not in the spiritual world, that's in the material world, is there's suffering in the material. And this is due to our own actions and the actions of collectively as a society, that there is suffering coming. And so that's the nature of the material world, that sometimes there's happiness and sometimes there's distress. So what Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita is he's saying it's going to come. In the material world, the distress is going to come. So expect it. And you have to, the only choice is to learn to tolerate it. And to see it, the devotee is able to see that as Krishna's mercy. And so, but when we take shelter of Krishna, he says, I will deliver you from all sinful reactions. So we know that when we take shelter of Krishna as a devotee, that he is in control of it. And that suffering that we face is directly there, specifically to help us advance spiritually where we are. So.
The happiness. And how is it that we have to tolerate happiness? Can't we just enjoy happiness and get into happiness? Why should we just tolerate happiness?
Well, we have to understand what true happiness is. Because temporary material happiness actually leads to suffering. Because when we are trying to satisfy our senses, we're engaging in a process of sense gratification. It is a selfish desire. It's I want to please myself. And Krishna says that our greatest enemy is this intense material desire, this lust, and it can never be satisfied. And when you try to satisfy your temporary material pleasures, it's like pouring fuel on a fire. So tolerate the urges that come. That we can do activities, but certain activities when we do, they simply lead to suffering. So certain things that we withhold from intoxication. We don't get intoxicated. We don't gamble. No gambling. This cultivates honesty. No illicit sex. This cultivates cleanliness in body and mind. And no meat eating. This cultivates tolerance and compassion. So to tolerate these urges based on the bodily demand, and to enjoy instead through doing whatever we do for the pleasure of